This particular video is, I think I have two subjects, and maybe three, but mostly two subjects, and they both tie together, and both are dealing with God. So the first one I wanted to express is the concept. A lot of times gurus kind of insinuate that they are the way for you to get enlightenment, etc., etc. And in another way, Jesus, and this is mostly what I'm referring to, how Jesus talked about no one comes to the Father except through me. And that's a pretty powerful statement. And typically people that are raised in Christianity from birth, they don't see that as a problem or an issue. But I know for a surety that people that meet in sanghas or have a tilt towards Eastern philosophy, Hinduism, gurus, all that sort of thing, they tend to have a negative reaction to that. And so that's what I'm going to start with. Let's get number 3 out of the way right now, the third subject. Let's get that out of the way right now. And that subject is my name. And let me explain how that came about. My name is not Billy Kranston. It is a pen name. My real name is John Brent Arness. And the reason I do that is because over a decade ago, I started making videos, and I specifically started making videos because I was going to promote my home construction manual, and in reality, I do believe it's the best in the world for someone to follow and to build their own home. And so I started that video under the name Build-Flow. And so I have a YouTube video channel called Build-Flow. And, it's clearly indicated my name is John Arness, etc., etc. And then I started making spiritual writings and stuff, and I didn't want to be taken as though I wasn't serious. And so I started off thinking, well, I'll just invent a name, and I called it Billy Kranston. And then as a decade goes by further, I'm still maintaining that name because I want people to take it serious. And you know how when, for instance, you'll talk to somebody or you'll watch a video, let's say, and I'm going to use hyperbole here, but they happen to make a video and they are very good at building engines, how to rebuild engines, and you watch these videos and everything. And then you find out that same individual is an accomplished doctor that does heart surgery. And so then he's making videos about heart surgery. Well, if a person were seriously interested in having heart surgery and they found out that this guy is also an auto mechanic, they would just not take it serious, and they would go, no, I'm not having this guy work on me, because society has been raised on the idea that you can only do one thing well. And I have been told by people who know me personally, they go, you know what, John, you're like what they call a Renaissance man. And I didn't even know what that meant until I looked it up. But I'm very serious about this spiritual aspect of my life, and I want it to be taken serious because I'm trying to help people understand what spirituality is and what enlightenment is and all these sorts of things. And so that's why I went that direction. And now 10 years later, I mean, if you were to look up my videos, you would see that my real name is John Arness. And so I'm not trying to hide anything. When I edit this video, maybe, like to go, oh, I'll put my name right here. I'll try to do that in the video. So that you know I'm not trying to hide anything. So that's out of the way. Now let's get back to the other subject, which is what Jesus said, no one comes unto the Father except through me. Now that could have been edited out of the Bible long ago, and it could have been seen as arrogant or insinuating exactly what it says, which is, I'm the gateway. You have to go through me to get to God. What does that mean? What does that mean? So let's reapply it to me personally, John Brent Arness, known on these videos as Billy Kranston. Let me spell it out crystal clear. If you're watching this video, you're not going to become one with God except through me. It's going to have to come through me. You're not going to make it there without me. Let's take it another step and say, if you're planning on becoming spiritually enlightened, and more specifically God enlightened, if that's the path you're on, you're not going to get there except through me. There is no other way. You cannot go another direction. You can't do it on your own. It's impossible. You have to go through me. Does that sound so effing arrogant that you, as well as any normal human being, would say not only no, but hell no? To hell with that guy. Who the hell does he think he is? But let's think about this in a logical fashion. Let's eliminate the causes of why someone would think that this guy is arrogant, meaning me. Why would you think that? Why would you think that you want to be one with God, but you're going to do it on your own? To hell with this guy that's making videos. To hell with John. I don't need him. Why would you think that? Why would you be so arrogant that you think you're going to be one, meaning one, think about that. You're going to be in a spiritual situation for all eternity, one with God, but you're going to take me and toss me out to the gutter. To hell with that piece of shit. I don't want him in my kingdom. But if God has already said, hey, John, you're God enlightened. You're already in the kingdom. You're already one with God. And I use kingdom lightly because I know from an Eastern philosophy that is a non-starter because there's no such thing as kingdom. But I still use the word. So to think that you're going to be in a loving, eternal union with God, and you're going to take me and toss me out, and God has already said he loves me, well, what does that say for you? If you're planning on tossing me out, it's not that you can't toss me out. God has already accepted me. So if you want to toss me out, that means you're tossing yourself out. You're not going to be one with God. And so the strong insinuation that comes across from Jesus saying that, or from me saying that, the strong insinuation is, I already know what the outcome of me is. So if I already know what the outcome of me is, and I'm right, that means you have to accept me as a co-eternal being one-manship with Brahma, with God, with Jesus, with Buddha, Krishna, whatever. I've already been accepted. Now, am I coming across as arrogant if I were to say that? And I am saying that? Does that come across as arrogant? Hell yes, it does. And I deeply apologize for sounding arrogant, because I don't mean to sound arrogant. I love you. I want you to be one with me as I am one with Jesus, as Jesus is one with God. I want that. That is a desire of mine. Eternal friendship. That's what I want. And so I apologize for sounding arrogant when I say that. But I say that because it's true. I say it because, and I've actually never said that before in any of my videos, because I don't want to cause a rift in such a way that you think in your heart and mind and soul, to hell with that bastard. Who does he think he is? I don't want you to think that. I would rather you to understand, firstly, that what I'm trying to teach is truth, which is very difficult because the world teaches lies, and everything out there in an organized fashion has been corrupted. That doesn't mean the originators are corrupt. That doesn't mean Buddha was corrupt, or Krishna, or Jesus, or any of your other divine deities or gurus that you think that are one with God. But after they die, it always gets corrupted, 100% of the time. That's the way it is in this reality. But I'm not dead yet. And so you have the ability to ask me questions and to clarify and to follow up, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm telling you is alive. It's not dead. It's alive. When I'm dead, that all changes. But right now, I'm not dead. So I'm saying the same thing as Jesus. There is no way except through me. But I'm not saying that because I'm arrogant. I'm saying it because it's true. And I know for a surety, because I'm human, just like everybody else. And I know that what that does when that is said, that causes an initial feeling within anyone to reject a person that would say something like that. Because I don't want to be one with an arrogant bastard. But what if I'm not, excuse me, arrogant? What if I'm not really arrogant? What if I'm just trying to help you and I'm just trying to tell you the truth? What if that's the truth? So when you think in your heart and soul, I'm not going to listen to this person because they're arrogant, that's something that is being said inside of you. That's an issue with you. It isn't an issue with me. I'm not arrogant. When you think I'm arrogant, that's because it's an issue within you. If God has already answered me and said, you are one with me, then I've accepted that. Why don't you accept that? And the reason you don't accept it, because there's something within you that causes this friction or whatever, and you identify it as arrogance. But I'm not arrogant. I only come across as arrogant because the message is arrogant. During the Kali Yuga, this particular dark ages, if you will, this spiritually dark period in the existence of mankind during this period of time, we've all been conditioned to reject the truth based upon arrogance. If there's something in conflict with what is established as the truth, then it must be arrogant. Do you see that? Okay, lastly, the other issue I wanted to cover, and I've covered this one before, but just kind of slightly, is the nature of God and why God is so, I'd like to say seemingly, but it isn't seemingly, it's actually factual, that God is so, shall I say, absent, in that you don't get to have a one-on-one communication with God. Now I know you can, lovey-dovey say, well, God, make communication with God every day because I see the leaves and they rustle and the wind blows and yeah, blah, blah, blah. That don't mean jack shit, because everybody sees the same thing as you see, and that is not one-on-one with God. And I'd like to get back to that because there's a concept that comes to my mind. But the reason is because the nature of God. Okay, again, I'm going to use a little bit of hyperbole here. But God is 100% right and true all the time. God doesn't tell lies. So let's say you're 25 years old and you are talking to God and God says, well, God would never say if you do this, because if means that God doesn't know. So if God said if, then that's not God you're talking to, because the if doesn't exist. For instance, Garden of Eden, so to say, in Christianity. If you partake of this fruit, if is the first indication that we're not hearing the words of God. Whoever is the so-called God that is communicating with this Adam and Eve and says, if you partake of the fruit, that's not Brahma, that's not God, that's Shiva, that's Satan. That's a deity that doesn't know the truth, doesn't know what reality is going to be. Because God would never say if. If is an indication that they don't know. So God would never do that. So if God were to say, you're going to die at 50 years old from a knife stabbing through your gut. You're going to die at 50 years old. Well, that would, and I'm using hyperbole here, that would eliminate your ability to exercise free will. God is never going to do anything to destroy that ability in you. And so you're going to think 50 years old, yeah, I'm going to prove God wrong. I'm going to take my life before I'm 50. Well, see, if God were to really say you're going to die of a knife stabbed in your gut at 50 years old, guaranteed you're going to die from a knife in your gut at 50 years old. You could say, well, I'm 49 years old and I don't want to go that way, so I'm going to get a gun. And you're going to get a gun, and since God is perfect, what's going to happen is you're going to take the gun, fill it with bullets, and you're going to go click, 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 click. Well, that doesn't work. Let's take a knife and I'm going to slit my throat. Oh, it's a rubber knife. There's nothing you can do to alter the edicts or the will of God. It's impossible. Can't be done. Or God isn't God. Does that make sense? So God is very, 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 very elusive in this particular realm. Now, does that mean that God doesn't love you? Not only no, but hell no. Because see, let's call it pre-existence, for instance. Prior to you being born in the physical capacity, or prior to your initial phase of inhabiting a human body, so being called a human, you agreed to this. Now, you don't remember, but you agreed, and you said, yeah, I want to move on to stage 1,567. I'm using hyperbole again, but you've agreed to this particular scenario. And what was the scenario spelled out? Well, the scenario was spelled out. You're going to be a human being, and you're going to live on a planet, and you're going to suffer all kinds of trials and tribulations. It's going to be painful. You're going to possibly starve to death. You're going to die. You're going to grow old, and it's going to be a miserable situation growing old. Nobody grows old pleasantly. I'm here to tell you, I'm 68 years old. It isn't pleasant to wake up in the morning and have all your aches and creaks and everything else. I'm not 20 years old. When I was 20, you wake up in the morning and you bounce out of bed and you're eager to get on with the rest of your day. And I can't even imagine what it's like. I mean, my father lived to be like 95 years old, and I wasn't pleasant for him in his final years, not pleasant at all. But we agreed to all of this before we ever became a human being, just like we agreed to everything because we have free will. We've agreed to it. At any point on that path, you can decide not to agree with it. No, I don't want to. But the problem is you can't undo what God has done in the agreement. Does that make sense? So God is going to stay away because God's not going to want to answer your prayers and this and that and everything else. Maybe a lower God would, but certainly not Brahma. So for me, what took place, and I'm not going to go into the details, but for me, what took place that caused the God enlightenment scenario to take place was I had to live through a difficult period that lasted just over 8 years. When I say difficult, I mean unbelievably difficult. Like even now, I don't even like to think about it. And when I say 8 years, I'm not talking about 4 years go by and then you have a year of wonderfulness and then no, I'm talking about successively, one day after another for over 8 years, and it never got better. It only got worse every damn day, and I didn't even know how I was going to survive another day. And yet another day came, and it was just as bad, if not worse, than the day before. And it was horrible. And I actually I actually thought about, I don't know how a normal person could deal with the stress that I'm dealing with. I don't think it's humanly possible for 99% of the population of the world. I got a pretty strong willpower. And for me to go through this, it's like, I don't know how other people can do this. This is like, most people would commit suicide. They wouldn't deal with what I had to deal with. And at the culmination of that 8+ years, maybe it took 8 years for me to get to that point. I don't know, but I never had anything less than the absolute love for God. I never had anything less than that. And at the culmination of that, I prayed to God, and I said, God, you're going to have to answer my prayer this time, and it's going to have to be answered exactly the way I lay it out. And if you don't answer my prayer exactly the way I've laid it out that you have to answer me, I will know that you don't love me. And if you don't love me, I accept that. I'm not a perfect person. I get it. I can understand why you wouldn't love me. Lots of people in this world don't love me. Most people that have known me for a while don't love me. So I can understand why God wouldn't love me. But if you don't love me, there is no point for me to be involved in church or making these spiritual videos or anything else, because if you don't love me, that must mean I'm terribly, terribly flawed as an individual in the basis of love and this and that and everything else that's involved with those sorts of things. So I said to God, if you don't answer my prayer exactly the way I say you have to, then I'll know for 100% of surety that you don't love me. And I will not go to church. I will not do anything like that. But I will go to my grave eventually, knowing in my heart that I love you, and I'm grateful for having this opportunity to be a human being. And I suspect that if you don't love me, then consequently, if there is such a thing as a hell, I'll spend all eternity in hell. And I was okay with that too. It's like that's fine with me. And of course, you don't get that way unless you are pushed to the limits. And after 8 years, I guarantee you, I was past the limit. and I didn't care. And so I made this prayer and I made these conditions upon God, which created, because of my free will, created a paradox. A paradox that put God in a position of a paradox, where if God didn't answer, well, then I was going to take it that God didn't love me. Now, God didn't have to answer me, of course, but then I would spend the rest of my life knowing that God doesn't love me. Well, what person that loves another person, or you love your child, what individual could possibly have that kind of a conversation with the other individual, and the individual, the parent would go, well, that's very interesting, and walk away and not say, oh, I love you, Bill or George or Susie or who. You're not going to just let that person think that you do not love them, if in fact you really do love them. You're not going to allow them to suffer like that. And because God saw that I was suffering, God answered me, and answered in such a profound way over the course of 3 days, that at the end of 3 days, I was God enlightened. And it was bizarre, to say the least. And it just changed my life. Now, being like Buddha enlightened, meaning enlightened about the physical reality and realm and everything, no, I wasn't there. It took several years before meeting a guru by the name of Jim McKenna that actually was an arrogant individual. And he was, in my opinion, a very terrible, he was a good person, but in what way was he good? I don't know. Maybe I guess he was a good father to his children, but I would not say he was a good husband, because his wife actually kicked him out prior to his dying of old age, or whatever he died from. I don't know. He was like 72 when he died. But most people, including myself, thought he was a terrible person. Because he was so damned arrogant and everything. And it took every ounce of my willpower to be in his presence, because he was so arrogant, and he was so abusive, and so insulting, and God, it was hard. Sangha met on a weekly basis, and sometimes I couldn't go back for sometimes 2-3 months. I couldn't go back. I just couldn't go back. It was too stressful for me. I just couldn't do it. I was the only person in that group that had a position of saying directly to them, non-duality is bullshit. It is a lie. It's satanic at worst and ignoramus at best. And of course, they all believed in non-duality, including Jim. And so that was a very, 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 very stressful. Nobody in that Sangha group, not even one, did see eye to eye with me, and thought that I was some sort of an enigma in that group. Like, why am I there? But the Guru Jim, I honestly, fully believe that he loved me, regardless of how he treated me. I felt that in his own way, he loved me. And I stuck with it. And eventually I became enlightened. Was he enlightened? Yeah, he was. Buddha enlightened? I think he was. God enlightened? No, definitely not. So I think I'm going to end this video with that, and There are people that email me, a few, not many, a few. And anyone is welcome to email me. And don't place the comments on the YouTube video. You can, but I'm not going to go into any great detail that way. But if you email me, like I said, there's not many, and I will correspond, and I will answer you. But be prepared for very oppositional, stressful situations. Because 100% of you have to go through an extremely life-altering scenario that you do not like. You do not want to go through it. You don't know you don't want to go through it. You think you want to become enlightened. You think you want to become God enlightened. You think you want to learn this, that, and whatever. You think that there's a way to make one step after another and get there. But you don't realize that's not the way it works. You don't realize that it's like one step after another and you think you're getting closer and you're getting closer. You don't realize that you have to fall off the cliff and lose everything. And you're screaming for help. And you're falling into a pit of despair because you're losing every ounce of work that you took to climb that ladder, spiritual ladder. You're going to lose it all. It's going to hurt like holy hell. And gurus don't do that for you typically. What they do is they build your ego. They build a stronger ego for you so that you feel more confident in yourself. And you grow more and more and more confident that what you're doing is correct and right. And it's a big kumbaya love fest. And you do need a foundation. You do need a solid foundation like that to be able to lose it all. You do need that. But you can't lose all of it. You still have to maintain love. Because if you lose that, then you will fall into the pit of despair and you will lose everything and you will end up never becoming enlightened. Never. If you lose that foundation of love. Because you can read through, for instance, from a Christian standpoint, you can read through the Buddha, for instance, and you can go, well, he was a godless man. He didn't believe in God. Okay, that's fine. But you can't say he wasn't loving. You can't say that, because if you read the things that were written about him, and I like to say about because there is no actual evidence that he penned anything that survives to this day. So we can only say, just like Jesus, there's no book of Jesus. Jesus never wrote anything that survived to this day. And nobody even claims that Jesus wrote anything. So all we have is secondary, third, fourth, fifth chain of events that take place. And that's what we have. So if you read those writings that are second-hand, fourth-hand, whatever, about Buddha, and you understand it, you can't come away from it and say, well, he didn't love people. You could come away and say he didn't believe in God, but you can't say that he didn't love people. And with Jesus, you can't say that he didn't love people, and you can't say that he didn't love God. Because to do so is denying the evidence that's right before you. Anyways, with that, I'm going to say, put an end to this video. And thank you for watching. And I hope, again, that you have a good weekend. And all those that are going to become one with God, I love you. I really do. Because, why? Why? Because you're going to be the same as God. Right now, you're a muddy mess, so to say. You're all over the place. You've got proclivities for abuse, or you've got you can't control your eating habits, or you're poor and you steal things from stores, or you cheat on your spouse, or you're not honest in your business dealings, or there's just a long list of things that people do that are self-destructive, and they would self-judge themselves as not being worthy. But Jesus said everything is forgivable, except for the sin against the Holy Ghost. And I've gone into that. People don't know what a sin against the Holy Ghost is. Anyway, so it's all forgivable. So forgive yourself and try as hard as you can to do the right thing. You have a connection to God through the Holy Ghost, which is yourself. You have a connection. It's very subtle. You don't recognize it. You don't know when you can't decipher the difference between yourself and God. It's very, very subtle. It's just, it's like a feeling, but you know. You don't have to be taught the difference between right and wrong. You've already know it. You knew it before you were born. But you keep choosing the wrong thing. And every time you choose the wrong thing, you can be forgiven of that. You just have to recognize it's the wrong thing and try to do the right thing. And maintain a love for yourself, your neighbor, and God. And it's all forgivable. It isn't easy, but it's all forgivable. And so it doesn't matter what kind of a miserable slut or whatever, I said slot, not slut, for those women that might be watching. All of it's forgivable. And that's why I love you. Why wouldn't I love you when you're trying to do what's right? Do you think I'm perfect? Well, you're perfect too. We're all perfect. We're perfect at what we are. It's like if you wanted a beautiful flower that you could, put in your hair. Would you put a cactus on your head and poke your? No, of course not. But the cactus is perfect, and so is the flower. They're both perfect. So you're perfect. You're perfect in what you are. In other words, you might have self-doubt because you steal things to survive or whatever it is you do that you know is wrong, okay? And you want to stop doing that. You're still perfect. And you have the ability to change from a cactus to a flower. But only you can do that. And you can do that through the power of forgiveness. So when you're one with God, of course, and I'm one with God, then we will love each other. And if I don't love you, I'm not going to be there. Does that make sense? We're getting back to the first part of the video, where I said, no one comes to the Father except through me. No one becomes God enlightened except through me. Well, does someone that doesn't know me and has never watched my video, do they have to go through me? Not knowingly. But they will eventually in some lifetime, because I'm one with God. Do I have to go through Jesus? Yeah, absolutely I have to go through Jesus. But why would I care? Why would I have any issues against that? There's a person that loves me, and I love them, so why would I mind going through them? I have no problem with that. It's fun, it's enjoyable, it's another friend. And that's the way you look at it. You don't look at it as arrogance, because the world is filled with arrogant people that you think you have to go through, and if they're not one with God. And see, that's the other issue. Since a lot of people have to have forgiveness, it's like, will you have to go through them? Well, at this point you don't, because they're not ready. They haven't repented. They haven't changed. They haven't made themselves worthy. Anyways, I'm rambling. I'm sorry. Thank you for watching. I love you. Bye.